With the 2026 Olympics in Milan coming up and some potentially new entries into the conversation, I thought that this was the perfect time to ask the question, who is the greatest skater of all time? Men's edition. Hi, I'm Coach Leaf, and I'm here to answer that question and potentially shed some light on the conversation about who the greatest skater is and what our criteria for that even is, if there can be anything for such a thing. So with that being said, this video is going to be broken up into a couple of sections. I have the OGs, the original greatest of all time skaters, as well as our modern greatest of all time skaters, and then we're going to look at all of these different people and figure out who, if any of them, is the greatest skater of all time, and how that question can even be answered in the first place. This is definitely not a video where we're only looking at competitive record. We're sort of looking at the entire body of work, what they meant to the sport, their competitive record, their cultural impact, and anything that they've done beyond that sport after that time that is changed the way that their legacy is looked at and the way that they've affected the sport and the people that have come after. So with that being said, let's get into it. Who is the greatest skater of all time? The first skater that we're looking at today is Ulrich Salchow, the original Olympic champion, 10-time world champion, 9-time European champion, the inventor of the Salchow star figure, and of course, the Salchow jump that skaters are still performing to this day. He would also go on to be the ISU president for 12 years, continuing his commitment to the sport of figure skating, and really truly is the first original greatest skater of all time. Next on our list is Gillis Grafström, the only person with the distinction of 3 Olympic gold medals in the history of the sport of figure skating, as well as a second. He also had 3 world titles and 3 Swedish championships. He is one of the very interesting cases in figure skating in his day. He pretty much just showed up to win the Olympics and Worlds and then disappeared in between. A trend that we're going to run into a little bit more later on in this video. But one of the things that's pretty clear from his record is that he was a dominant force in his time, and that if Gillis Grafström showed up to these Olympic Games, you were probably going to watch him deliver a gold medal performance. The only person with 3 Olympic gold medals is certainly a very, very amazing distinction, and he did it 3 times in a row, with that 4th time being his one and only silver medal. Next up is Karl Schäfer, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, 7 straight world titles, 8 straight European titles, 7 straight Austrian national championships, and didn't lose a major competition for 7 straight years. There's a lot of people that I know within the sport of figure skating that consider Karl Schäfer to be the GOAT, and there's a really convincing reason for this. This is quite possibly one of the most impressive, dominant competitive records, and it was held for the span of over 2 Olympic cycles. Truly incredible stuff right there. Next up, we have Richard Dick Button, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, 5-time world champion, 7 straight national titles, and 5 straight seasons without a major event loss. This was one of the great skaters of the era. He invented the flying camel. He was the first person to ever land a double axel in competition. He was the first person to ever land a triple jump in competition. To say that those things are staples to the sport even to this day is an understatement. The trailblazing that Dick Button did was truly incredible, and it probably didn't end on the ice. In fact, his illustrious career as a commentator went on for over 40 years, and he gave the sport a level of visibility that was never seen up until this date. I can just speak from this from personal experience. Dick Button struck fear in the hearts of skaters of my generation. And one of my greatest memories about this is in the 2002 Nationals in which I was attendance. And after Michelle Kwan skated, you can hear on the broadcast Dick make a comment about how he's being pelted by the plush toys, these Chevy plush toys that were being given out at the competition. I can tell you this from firsthand experience. Those ones weren't for Michelle, Mr. Button. Those ones were meant for you, and I know exactly who threw them. The main thing, though, is that Dick Button was a staple of this sport for so long that he, more than any other person of our era, embodied what it meant to strive for the highest level of excellence and have to be able to face that on the other side when you didn't achieve that, because most certainly Mr. Button would let you know. He has, again, given endless amounts to the sport, and it's really difficult not to pretty much glaze him over how much he has meant to the sport of figure skating. Dick Button is truly one of a kind. Next up, we have the Jenkins brothers, David Jenkins and Hayes Allen Jenkins, and it's almost difficult to treat them as two separate entities because I think in a lot of people's minds, they go together. Between them, they had 7 world titles and 2 Olympic golds, and really, this was one of the big parts of the era of the sport where we're starting to see technical and artistry really skyrocket. I think Dick Button was also a huge part of this, and just the sheer amount of dominance that they had over that 7 years definitely puts them in the GOAT conversation. During the 1960s and 70s, figure skating saw its first ever era of parity, and while it did still have multi-time world champions and Olympic champions like Andrei Nepola, it was defined more by big Olympic performances by skaters like John Curry and Robin Cousins. Because of this, we saw many different champions during this time at the world level, and we saw the onset of many different countries entering the conversation of who could win the world championships. But this was all about to change in 1981, because the next dominant stretch in men's figure skating was about to happen, from a skater with big jumps and an even bigger performance. Scott Hamilton would go on to win 4 straight national titles, 5 Grand Prix wins, 4 straight world titles, and the Olympics at the end of that. It would be 4 straight seasons of winning every single major competition that he entered. Scott would go on to have one of the most legendary post-competitive show careers of all time, in addition to being one of the commentators for US figure skating for many years. He's without a doubt one of the most recognizable faces in all of figure skating, and absolutely is a legend within the sport to everybody that he came in contact with. Next up, we have Brian Boitano, who won 2 world titles, 4 straight national titles. He had 3 Grand Prix wins and the Olympic win in one of figure skating's most legendary rivalries of all time, the Battle of the Bryans, in which he overtook Brian Orser at the Olympics to win the gold. While Scott's career was defined by 4 years of straight dominance, I feel like Brian's is enhanced by having one of the most ferocious rivalries that has ever taken place in figure skating, and certainly one of the most iconic. The fact that Brian Orser and Brian Boitano were so closely skilled, and that they were trading world championships during this 4-year stretch, really kind of gave a testament to how great of a competitor he was, and that overtook him in terms of the cultural impact that he left on the ice, especially in his show career that spanned very similar lengths to Scott Hamilton's. But maybe the thing that really tipped him off as one of the legends of the sport was his immortalization in the show of South Park. While this is certainly outside of the scope of the competitive aspects of this video, this is kind of what we're talking about in terms of leaving that cultural impact. There's no skater that was more recognizable for a longer time than Brian Boitano. I grew up believing that Brian Boitano was the greatest skater of all time, and practically everybody I knew agreed with me. When I did polls when I was asking about other coaches who they thought was the greatest skater of all time, no person came up more than Brian Boitano, and it just goes as a testament to the cultural impact that he left during this time, as well as watching the sport take such a huge technical jump and him being the one to conquer that mountain in a way that really skating modernized around that in the eras to come. He left an impact that was never really forgotten and is still one of the gold standards for excellence within the sport of figure skating. Canada did not take this loss lightly, though, and they would go on to win 6 of the next 7 world championships between Kurt Browning and Elvis Stojko in what was maybe one of the greatest stretches of Canadian skating of all time. And while the Canadians were dominating at the world level, the Russians were quietly putting together something at the Olympic level that started with victories at the Olympics from Alexei Yagudin and Ilya Kulik, but it was about to come to a head in 1998, when the next dominant stretch in men's figure skating was about to happen. Alexei Yagudin would go on to win 4 world titles, 3 straight. He'd win the Grand Prix final 2 times, 3 European titles, and he would go on to win one of the fiercest rivalries in figure skating history against Evgeni Plushenko in the 2002 Salt Lake Olympics. If the Battle of the Bryans is considered to be the most iconic in figure skating history, the battle between Evgeni Plushenko and Alexei Yagudin might just go down as the fiercest in figure skating history. These two did not like each other, and it showed in their performances out on the ice and the way that they approached competition in general. Perhaps one of the most interesting things about Alexei Yagudin's legacy is that even though he was a multi-time world champion and Olympic champion, he never once won the Russian national title, and that should just go to show how fierce the rivalry really was between him and Evgeni Plushenko. And between these two, we watched basically a 10-year stretch of Russian dominance that basically nobody could touch. Evgeni Plushenko's career would not end after his defeat at the 2002 Olympics. Far from it. In fact, he would go on to win 3 total world titles, 7 European titles, 4 Grand Prix titles, 10 Russian nationals in a row that he entered, and then the Olympic gold medal. All total, he won 4 Olympic medals in his career, as he would go on to compete at 2 more Olympics after his Olympic gold medal, although he would stop entering competitions nearly as often and really enter what I would consider to be his Gillis Grafström era, where he would pretty much just show up for the Olympics. Nonetheless, the body of work itself is one of the most dominant stretches that we've seen in men's figure skating. And just to give you an idea of how good Evgeni Plushenko was, he was the youngest skater ever to get a 6.0. He got 75 6.0s in total in his career. He then had to compete under the new judging system, in which he broke 13 world records during that time. And he also competed all the way until the team event was there so that he could claim a second Olympic gold medal. There are a lot of people out there who consider Evgeni Plushenko to be the GOAT, and if we're talking just off of pure amount of titles, he very well may be the most dominant in figure skating history in terms of the modern era. He's certainly not without controversy though, and I would say being bested by some of his rivals put him in an interesting place in the GOAT conversation. He was such a dominating force during his era, though, that he's undeniably one of the people that is in consideration for the greatest figure skater of all time. Next on our list is Hanyu Yuzuru, 2-time world champion, 4-time Grand Prix final champion, 6-time national champion, and 2-time Olympic gold medalist, the first person since Dick Button to win 2 individual gold medals in men's figure skating, something that was basically considered to be impossible to do after Evgeni Plushenko wasn't able to do it. This is absolutely one of the most crazy figure skating careers that we have ever seen, and he might be the inverse to the Evgeni Plushenko question. While he's not as dominant on a competition-to-competition basis, Hanyu Yuzuru might be one of the greatest risers to the occasion of all time. On top of that, he had 11 straight seasons of competition, in which 11 in a row of those, he had at least a Grand Prix win in every single one. He broke world records 19 times, and his overall skating quality is considered to be one of the highest of all time. And when it comes to just embodying the complete performance, the ability to jump, spin, connect with the audience, just the absolute majesty that he commands while he's on the ice, he might just be unmatched in this area and is quite possibly one of the most popular skaters online today and was really one of the most dominant forces on the ice during his time. Finally, the last skater we're going to be taking a look at today in the GOAT conversation is none other than Chen, who won 3 world titles, 3 Grand Prix finals, 6 national titles, the Olympic gold, the Olympic team gold. He has 7 current world records in the judging system, and that's just standing right now. He had many more while he was actually skating. The big thing about Chen, too, that has to be taken of note is that his time happened during the COVID lockout, and he missed an entire season. We're very likely looking at 4 world titles, 4 Grand Prix, and all of that, 7 national titles. Add 1 to basically all of those things, because that's how dominant he was. I believe he only got 1 second place over the entire 4-year stretch, and really just cruised to competition after competition victory. Chen was absolutely incredible and reset the world standard for men's figure skating for the United States, and we're even now still ushering in a great era with our current crop with Ilya Melinin and the entire group that we're sending to the Olympics in Milan. But Chen's mark that was left on figure skating was absolutely undeniable. He raised the technical bar to a level that even surpassed where Hanyu had taken it, and we're still living in that era a little bit right now that Ilya has just recently bested with his quad axle, and he's starting to chip away at some of those records. So after all of that, who is the greatest skater of all time in men's figure skating? Personally, I think we have to go with Dick Button. After all of that, after every contribution that he's given to the sport, his incredible competitive record, his constant innovations to the sport, and really his lifelong commitment, not only promoting the sport, but spreading knowledge of the sport, had a ripple effect among the community that led us to where the sport is at today. And I think that his impact is simply immeasurable, and there's probably never going to be anything quite like it. He really is the Babe Ruth of figure skating. But I also want to name a modern GOAT in this because I think that exercise is really difficult, and we have so many compelling skaters in that conversation. And if I had to distill it down to just one, trying to remove my own personal bias as much as I can and factor in as many different opinions, competitive record, the complete body of work, how people are feeling today versus how they felt in other eras, I think Hanyu Yuzuru is probably the modern GOAT right now. Although if I were being on a personal level, I might say Brian Boitano. And honestly, I'm sure there are many Russian people that watch the sport that are feeling like, hey, this is absolutely Evgeni Plushenko. But if I had to distill it down to one, I think Hanyu probably hits the most check boxes. He's got world records, multiple Olympic titles, something that has been a ghost in the sport ever since Dick Button did it and hadn't been done since. So for that, I think tips him over the top as the greatest skater of all time. But what do you think? Please let me know in the comments who you think is the greatest skater of all time. Is it Hanyu? Is it someone else that I mentioned in the video? Is it somebody else entirely that I didn't even name? I want to know. Let me know in the comments below, and we'll talk about who the greatest lady skater is in the next video. All right, I will talk to you then.